Emily was a young woman of 25 when she married Daniel Turner. Daniel was kind, steady, and hardworking. He had grown up in a small town in Indiana, raised mostly by his widowed mother, Martha Turner. Emily loved Daniel deeply, but from the first day she met Martha, she sensed something unusual about her. Martha was not like other mothers-in-law Emily had heard about. She wasn't openly rude, nor was she dismissive. Instead, Martha was overly warm, almost too warm. She hugged Emily too tightly and held on too long, as if she were measuring her. She often stared at Emily, not with admiration, but with an unsettling curiosity, as though she were studying an object she planned to keep. At first, Emily brushed it off. After all, Martha had raised Daniel alone after losing her husband in a car accident. It made sense she was protective of her only child. But soon, Emily realized Martha's behavior wasn't just protectiveness. It was something far stranger. The obsession started small. Martha insisted on visiting Daniel and Emily's new home 3 or 4 times a week. She brought food, laundry detergent, towels, and even pillows, telling Emily that hers were never soft enough for Daniel. She rearranged Emily's kitchen cabinets without asking, placing everything exactly as she thought Daniel liked them. Daniel laughed about it, telling Emily, "That's just Mom. She's harmless." But Emily noticed how Martha would cling to Daniel's arm during visits, stroking his hand as though he were still a boy. Whenever Emily tried to sit close to her husband, Martha would find a way to wedge herself between them. One evening, while Daniel was outside fixing the porch light, Martha leaned close to Emily and whispered something that made her blood run cold. "You'll never love him the way I do. You may be his wife, but you're just a shadow. I'm his everything." Emily was frozen in shock. When Daniel returned, Martha quickly smiled, acting as though nothing had been said. Emily tried to tell Daniel later, but he dismissed it. "Mom's lonely. Don't take it personally." The weeks went by, and Martha's visits became longer. Sometimes she would arrive unannounced, letting herself in with a spare key Daniel had given her years ago. Emily would find her in their bedroom, folding Daniel's shirts or smoothing his bedsheets. Once, she even found Martha sitting on Daniel's side of the bed, inhaling the scent of his pillow with her eyes closed. When Emily confronted her, Martha said calmly, "A mother never stops caring for her son. You should thank me for keeping his things the way he likes them." Emily's unease grew into fear. She began locking the doors, but somehow Martha always managed to get inside. She would make comments about Emily's cooking, her clothes, and even the way she styled her hair for Daniel. "Daniel prefers when I cut his hair. He's always liked it shorter," Martha said one evening, holding a pair of scissors she had brought from home. Emily felt as though her life was being slowly invaded. She confided in a friend, who told her bluntly, "That woman doesn't see you as Daniel's wife. She sees you as competition." Emily tried to ignore the warning, but deep inside, she knew it was true. Martha's eyes always carried a strange gleam whenever Daniel walked into the room, as if she were unwilling to let him belong to anyone else. And then, one night, the obsession crossed a line Emily could no longer deny. She woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone humming in the kitchen. Daniel was asleep beside her. Terrified, Emily crept out of bed, only to find Martha standing in the dark, stirring a pot of soup on the stove as if she lived there. When Emily gasped, Martha turned slowly, her face calm and her voice chilling. "I'm just making dinner for my boy. He'll always need me, more than he'll ever need you." At that moment, Emily realized this was no longer just overprotectiveness. This was obsession, and obsession, if left unchecked, could become something far more dangerous. After the night, she found Martha cooking in their kitchen at 2 a.m. Emily could no longer pretend everything was normal. She lay awake most nights, listening for footsteps, afraid that Martha might appear again without warning. The next morning, Emily begged Daniel to change the locks. He looked tired, annoyed even, but he agreed. "Fine, Em. I'll change them this weekend. But you've got to stop letting Mom get under your skin. She means well." But Martha did not take the lock change well. The following Monday, she showed up at their doorstep, banging on the door until Daniel let her in. Her smile was fixed, but her eyes carried a storm. "Why was my key not working?" she asked sweetly. Daniel tried to laugh it off. "We just updated the locks, Mom. Security reasons, you know." Martha's smile twitched. She turned her gaze to Emily, and though her voice stayed calm, her words were sharp as glass. "Strange. I never needed security when it was just Daniel and me. No one locked me out of his life before. Emily felt her stomach knot. Over the next few weeks, Martha's behavior grew even stranger. She began leaving gifts on the porch, home-cooked meals, photo frames of Daniel as a boy, even handwritten notes reminding him to come home soon. One day, Emily found a note tucked under their windshield wiper that read, "You can play wife, but you'll never be his real home." Emily showed it to Daniel, but he shook his head. "Mom's dramatic. She doesn't mean harm." But Emily could see what Daniel refused to. The gifts, the notes, the constant appearances. Martha wasn't letting go. She was tightening her grip. Things escalated one Saturday when Daniel invited his mother to dinner. Hoping to ease the tension, Emily agreed, though her nerves twisted tighter with each hour. She cooked a roast, set the table, and tried to keep things civil. At first, the dinner was calm. Martha complimented the food, though her tone was dry, almost forced. Then, halfway through the meal, she reached across the table, brushing crumbs off Daniel's shirt. "You've lost weight, Danny. You're not eating well." "Emily, are you feeding him properly?" Emily's face burned. Daniel tried to laugh it off, but Martha wasn't done. "He looks tired. He needs rest, care, and love. I know what's best for him. I always have." Emily set down her fork, her hands trembling. "Daniel is a grown man. He doesn't need you taking care of him like he's still a child." Martha's eyes snapped to Emily, cold and unblinking. Her lips curved into a smile, but there was venom behind it. "Careful, dear. Don't speak of things you don't understand. A wife is temporary. A mother is forever." The words sent a chill through the room. Daniel excused himself to grab dessert from the fridge, leaving the two women in tense silence. Martha leaned closer to Emily, her voice low, almost a hiss. "You think you've won him, but he belongs to me. He always will." Emily's hands clenched under the table. For the first time, she felt not just fear, but danger. That night, she told Daniel, "Your mother doesn't just want to be part of our lives. She wants to replace me." Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You're exaggerating. Mom's intense, but she's not dangerous." But Emily knew. She could see it in Martha's eyes, hear it in her voice. There was something dark growing in that woman, a dangerous obsession that could only end badly. And soon, Martha's obsession would begin to twist into something far more sinister. Emily tried to carry on with life, but Martha's presence clung to her like a shadow. She began noticing small things that disturbed her. Items went missing from the house. A hairbrush, one of Daniel's shirts, a photograph from their wedding album. At first, she thought she misplaced them, but deep inside, she knew who was behind it. One morning, Emily was folding laundry when she found something stuffed inside one of Daniel's drawers. It was a necklace, one she had never seen before, an old silver locket. When she opened it, her stomach dropped. Inside was a faded picture of Daniel as a child. On one side. On the other was a picture of Martha herself, younger, smiling warmly. It wasn't strange for a mother to keep such a thing, but this was hidden in Daniel's drawer. He hadn't put it there. That night, Emily confronted Daniel. "Did you put this here?" she asked, holding up the locket. Daniel frowned. "No, that's Mom's. She must have left it here." Emily shook her head. "No, she didn't leave it. She put it here, in your drawer. She's crossing every line, Daniel. Can't you see it?" Daniel's face hardened. "Emily, enough. She's my mother. Stop making her sound like some villain. She's just lonely." The argument ended in silence, but Emily's heart was heavy. She knew something had shifted. Martha wasn't simply clingy anymore. She was claiming territory. The true turning point came 2 weeks later. Daniel had to leave town for a short business trip. It was the first time Emily would be home alone without him since the obsession began. The first night passed quietly. Emily double-checked the locks, pulled the curtains, and left the hall light on. But the second night, she heard it, the sound of the back door creaking open. Her heart pounded. She grabbed the phone, ready to call 911, when she heard a voice drift through the darkness. A woman's voice. "Danny, Danny, I'm here. I'll take care of you." Emily froze. It was Martha. She stepped into the kitchen and flicked on the light. There stood Martha, her hands full of folded laundry. Daniel's laundry. His favorite shirts, neatly pressed. "Martha, what are you doing here?" Emily cried. Martha didn't flinch. Her eyes had a strange, dreamy look. "He doesn't like when his clothes are wrinkled. I came to make things right. You don't know how to care for him, but I do." Emily backed away, her voice trembling. You can't just break into our home. This is wrong. Martha's lips curved into a small, eerie smile. Wrong? No, dear. It would be wrong to let him suffer in your careless hands. Daniel needs me. He's always needed me. The words were spoken with such calm certainty that Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. She realized then that Martha truly believed what she was saying, that in her mind, Emily wasn't a wife. She was an intruder. Emily managed to force her out of the house, threatening to call the police. Martha left without a fight, but not before whispering something that would haunt Emily long after. You'll see. He doesn't belong to you. He belongs to me. When Daniel returned, Emily tried again to explain what happened, but his disbelief was stronger than ever. Mom wouldn't hurt you. She's eccentric, but she's harmless. Emily wanted to scream. Couldn't he see the danger? Couldn't he feel the madness in his mother's voice? But it was clear now, Daniel couldn't or wouldn't see it. And that left Emily alone. Alone with a woman who would do anything to keep her son. What Emily didn't know was that Martha's obsession was already reaching its breaking point. And once it broke, nothing and no one would be safe. Emily's days turned into a blur of dread. She stopped feeling safe in her own home. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the hallway made her jump. Even when Daniel was home, she felt the weight of Martha's eyes lingering, even when she wasn't physically there. Then, the phone calls began. At first, Emily thought they were harmless. The phone would ring late at night, and when she answered, the line was silent. But soon, she began to hear breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Once, she thought she heard a whisper. Danny. She told Daniel, who dismissed it as prank callers. But Emily knew. She could feel it. Martha was watching them always. The tension reached its peak one cold November evening. Daniel was late from work, and Emily was alone in the house. She was cooking dinner when a knock came at the door. She hesitated, fear prickling her skin. Through the peephole, she saw Martha. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, but her face carried that same unsettling calm. Emily thought about not answering, but then Martha spoke loudly through the door. Emily, I know you're in there. We need to talk. It's about Daniel. Against her better judgment, Emily opened the door just a crack. Martha pushed her way inside. She carried a small box in her hands. She set it on the table without asking. I brought something, she said softly. Emily's voice shook. You can't just barge into our home. Daniel isn't here. Martha smiled faintly. I know, but he doesn't need to be. You and I need to understand each other. Emily crossed her arms. There's nothing to understand. Daniel is my husband. Martha's eyes darkened. She opened the box slowly, revealing a collection of strange items. A lock of Daniel's hair, one of his baby's shoes, a small carved figurine Emily had never seen before. She stroked them tenderly, her hands trembling. You see, Martha whispered, Daniel has always been mine. From his first breath, from the moment I held him, he was mine. And then you came, stealing him away, pretending you could love him the way I do. Emily's stomach turned. This isn't love, Martha. This is obsession. You need help. Martha's expression changed in an instant. The calm smile vanished, replaced by something fierce and sharp. She leaned across the table, her voice low and icy. You're the one who needs help. You think he loves you more than me? You think you can take my son and keep him? No. Wives can be replaced. Mothers cannot. Emily backed away, her heart racing. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police. For a long moment, Martha didn't move. Then, slowly, she gathered the items back into the box. She stood, smoothing her wrinkled blouse, and gave Emily one last, terrifying smile. You'll regret standing between us, she whispered. You'll regret it. And with that, she walked out the door. When Daniel came home, Emily told him everything. The box, the threats, the terrifying look in Martha's eyes. But Daniel only shook his head in disbelief. She's my mom, Emily. She's not capable of hurting anyone. But Emily wasn't so sure. She had seen the darkness in Martha's eyes, heard the promise in her voice. For the first time, Emily began to believe that Martha wasn't just obsessed. She was dangerous. And if nothing was done, something terrible was going to happen. Emily could no longer shake the feeling that danger was near. Every sound outside the house made her heart jump. She double-checked the locks each night, pulled the curtains tightly shut, and kept her phone beside her in bed. But no amount of precaution eased her fear. She knew Martha's words were not empty. They were a warning. The breaking point came one Friday night. Daniel and Emily had just returned from dinner with friends. For a short while, Emily had felt normal, laughing and enjoying herself. But the moment they stepped inside the house, she knew something was wrong. The air felt heavy, and the faint smell of perfume, Martha's perfume, lingered in the hallway. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She whispered, "Daniel, someone's been here." Daniel sighed, weary. You're letting your imagination." But before he could finish, they saw it. On the dining table sat a plate of food, neatly covered with foil. Beside it, a handwritten note. "For my Danny. You need real care. Don't let her poison you." Emily's hands shook as she picked it up. "Daniel, this is too far." She broke in again. "She's not just visiting anymore. She's invading our lives." Daniel's face paled, but he forced a nervous smile. She probably just wanted to help." Emily snapped. "Help? This isn't help. This is madness, Daniel. She threatened me. She said I'd regret standing between you two. When will you wake up and see it?" Daniel rubbed his face, torn between love for his wife and loyalty to his mother. "She's not well. I'll talk to her." But Emily knew talking wasn't enough. The woman was unraveling. 2 days later, Emily got her proof. Daniel was at work when the phone rang. Hesitant, she answered. A soft, sing-song voice came through the line. "Emily, dear, I've been thinking. You don't make Danny happy. You make him tired. You make him weak. But don't worry. I'll fix it. Soon, he'll be free." Emily's blood ran cold. "Martha, leave us alone. If you come near this house again, I'll go to the police." Martha's laugh echoed through the receiver, sharp and chilling. "The police can't change the truth. A wife can be replaced. But a mother, never." The line went dead. When Emily told Daniel, he finally began to waver. Okay. Maybe she's gone too far. I'll stay with you tonight. Keep an eye on things." But Emily knew this was more than just too far. Martha was past reason. Her obsession had reached the breaking point. That night, Emily hardly slept. She sat awake, watching the shadows move across the bedroom walls. Beside her, Daniel slept deeply, unaware of the storm circling them. At 2 a.m., a noise jolted her upright. A faint scratching sound, coming from the back door. Her heart pounded. She grabbed Daniel's arm, shaking him awake. "Daniel, someone's at the door." He stumbled out of bed, groggy and confused. Together, they crept to the kitchen. The scratching stopped. Silence filled the air. Daniel peered through the window, but saw nothing. He locked the door tightly and whispered, "It's fine. Probably an animal." But Emily wasn't convinced. Deep down, she knew exactly who had been there. Martha, watching, waiting, testing the boundary between obsession and something far more dangerous. Emily began to feel trapped in her own life. Daniel was caught between them, blind to the danger. And Martha was circling closer, her fixation growing darker by the day. It was only a matter of time before the threat became real, before Martha's whispered promises turned into action. The breaking point had arrived, and soon, there would be no turning back. The air in the Turner household grew heavier with each passing day. Emily felt like she was living inside a trap, one that grew tighter no matter how much she struggled. Daniel tried to soothe her, but even he could no longer deny his mother's actions. The late-night calls, the break-ins, the threats. Martha was no longer just a worried parent. She was something far more dangerous. Emily begged him, "Daniel, we need a restraining order. She's unstable. I can't live like this." Daniel rubbed his face with tired hands. "She's my mom, Em. It feels wrong. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's the only way to keep you safe." But they never got the chance. It happened on a stormy night in December. Rain lashed the windows, and thunder rolled like distant drums. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch after a long day at work, the television flickering quietly. Emily tiptoed around him, heading upstairs to change into her nightclothes. That's when she heard it. A soft click, the sound of the back door opening. Her blood froze. She rushed back downstairs, her heart hammering in her chest. And there, standing in the doorway, dripping wet from the rain, was Martha. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes wide and glassy, her clothes plastered to her skin. In her hands, she carried something, an old kitchen knife that glimmered in the dim light. "Martha," Emily gasped. "What are you doing?" Martha's voice was low, trembling but steady. "I told you, Emily. I warned you. You're standing between me and my son." Tonight, that ends. Daniel stirred at the sound of voices, blinking awake. When he saw his mother, his jaw dropped. Mom? What? What are you doing with that knife? Martha's eyes softened when they landed on Daniel. Danny, sweetheart, don't be afraid. I'm here to protect you. She's poisoned you, twisted you away from me. But I'll fix it. I'll make it right. Emily's breath came fast and shallow. She edged closer to Daniel, whispering, "Call the police." But before he could move, Martha raised the knife. "No more lies. No more stealing him from me," she cried, her voice breaking with rage and grief. Daniel leapt up, placing himself between the two women. "Mom, stop. Put it down. You're not thinking straight." Martha's face contorted. For a moment, Emily thought she saw hesitation. But then Martha's eyes hardened, and she lunged. Daniel caught her arm, the knife flashing dangerously close. "Mom, stop. Please," he shouted, struggling to restrain her. Emily screamed, grabbing at Martha's wrist, trying to wrench the blade away. The struggle was chaos, shouts, tears, the sound of rain pounding against the windows. And then, in one horrifying moment, the blade found flesh. A sharp cry pierced the air. Daniel staggered back, clutching his side, blood blooming across his shirt. His eyes widened in shock as his legs gave way. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Emily screamed, "Daniel! Oh God, no!" Martha dropped the knife as if it burned her. She stared at her son, her face twisting in horror and disbelief. "No, no, Danny, I didn't mean." She fell to her knees beside him, her trembling hands reaching out. "Mommy's here. Mommy's here. I'll fix it. I'll fix it." But Daniel's breaths were shallow, his eyes glazed with pain. Emily pushed Martha aside, pressing her hands to the wound, sobbing. "Stay with me, Daniel. Please." Martha wailed, rocking back and forth, her voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to be this way. You weren't supposed to choose her. You were supposed to stay mine." The storm raged outside, but inside the house, a darker storm had broken loose. One born not of nature, but of obsession. An obsession that had finally turned into tragedy. The ambulance arrived too late. By the time the paramedics rushed Daniel to the hospital, his breathing was shallow and his pulse weak. Emily sat beside him, her hands stained red, whispering his name over and over. But before dawn broke, Daniel was gone. Emily's world shattered. The love of her life, the man she had built her future with, had been stolen in a single night by the very woman who claimed to love him most. Police swarmed the Turner home, questioning Emily for hours. She could barely speak through her sobs, but the truth was clear. Martha had broken in with a knife. Martha had threatened Emily before. Martha had stabbed her own son. The officers found the weapon still lying on the floor, smeared with Daniel's blood. They also found Martha in the living room, rocking herself in silence, humming a lullaby. Her hands trembled, her eyes empty, as if her mind had broken completely. When they tried to arrest her, she clung to the couch, screaming, "No, you don't understand. He's mine. He was always mine. She took him from me." It took 3 officers to restrain her. Even as they dragged her away in handcuffs, she was wailing Daniel's name. "Danny, Mommy's here. Don't leave me." Her cries echoed long after the patrol car pulled away. The funeral was quiet, attended by a few close friends and neighbors. Emily sat in the front row, numb, barely able to breathe. She kept replaying the night in her head, the storm, the knife, the horror in Daniel's eyes as he fell. People offered condolences, but the words felt empty. Nothing could undo what had happened. Nothing could erase the truth. The man she loved had been destroyed by the woman who claimed to love him most. The trial made headlines across the state. The media called it the obsession case. Reporters wrote about the mother-in-law who couldn't let go, the son caught in the middle, and the young wife who had seen the danger but could not stop it. Emily sat in court every day, her grief plain for the jury to see. Martha, however, showed no remorse. Sometimes she wept uncontrollably, insisting it was an accident. Other times she smiled strangely, muttering about how no one could separate her from her son. In the end, the jury found her guilty of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. Emily listened to the verdict with a hollow heart. Justice had been served, but it didn't bring Daniel back. It didn't erase the nights of fear, the warnings she had tried to give, or the life they had planned together. Months passed, and Emily slowly tried to rebuild her life. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by memories. Daniel's laugh, his shirts folded neatly, the empty space beside her in bed. She sold the house and moved away, hoping distance would dull the pain. But some nights, when the wind howled against the windows, she could still hear Martha's words echoing in her mind. A wife can be replaced. A mother cannot. Those words would never leave her. They were the words that had led to obsession, to madness, to blood. And though Martha now lived behind prison bars, her shadow still lingered in Emily's life, a chilling reminder of how love, when twisted into obsession, can turn into the darkest form of hatred.